Hello guys, welcome back to today. We're going to be talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Boston Bruins playoff series. But the Tampa Bay Lightning defeat the Boston Bruins in 5 games. I mean, nobody really expected 5 games. Everybody thought it was going to be a lot more close, but apparently the Tampa Bay Lightning get it done in 5 games, which I'm not opposed to, as I like the Tampa Bay Lightning a lot more than the Boston Bruins. But I think that obviously it was a lot. I thought everybody really thought it was going to be a much closer series, at least for the games. I mean, we've seen some playoff series where it's a lot closer than the record entails, but still, a lot of us thought it was going to go to at least 6 or 7 games. But it's crazy. These are one of the series that goes 5 games. You'd think it'd be one of the ones that would go 7. I mean, Boston had already played 7 games. You'd think it would be another one. But if you predicted this series to be over in 5 games, props to you. And even predicting Tampa Bay, props to you, man. I mean, 5 games, who would have expected that? So let's start with the game, shall we? And first, with game 1, the Bruins obviously looking fantastic with a 6-2 start in the first, not the first period, but the first game, 6-2. It was a wild, wacky game. The Bruins started off well. The Tampa Bay Lightning looked vulnerable, and it was obviously the Bruins' best game in this series, and it showed. Bruins came out to play. I remember watching that game thinking, man, the Bruins are scary good, and they showed it in that game. Obviously not in the rest of the series, but in that game, they looked fantastic. Taking the first game, it was looking like the Boston Bruins had the momentum on their side, but of course that 6-2 victory obviously tailed a little bit as it was their best game throughout the series, no, without a doubt. Offensively too, they had everything going. It was just all working for them, and in that one game it felt like the Bruins were going to have a great series against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and it was looking that way except for the rest of the games. In that game 2, it is a completely different story, though, of the Lightning winning over the Bruins 4-2, and of course it looked a lot better. It's a close game throughout the whole thing. It looked like neither team could win, but right down to the wire, it was on. But 4-2 victory for the Lightning, able to squeak it out, and that was a key thing throughout this whole series. It was a close game throughout the whole series. There was really no time when the Lightning seemed like the dominant team or the Bruins seemed like a terrible team. It was close throughout the whole thing. It could have gone in Boston's way a couple more times, but in this game, the Lightning were able to squeak it out, and I think that's the main thing from this game and for the rest of the series. Then we head over to Game 3, where the Lightning won 4-1 over the Bruins. Probably their biggest win of the series, at least from the goal differential. But a 4-1 win, they looked really good in this game. The offense was rolling. Boston had a lot of chances, though, and they were looking pretty decent. Only scored 1 goal, but they had a lot of chances, and they were looking good. Rask didn't look all too great, but he was still in there. Vasilevsky looked fantastic, though. The Bruins were able to get lots of stuff done, and they looked great in that game. But besides that, it was a good game to watch. It was close, but the Bruins were not able to get it, even though they were neck and neck with Tampa, at least from playing wise, in my opinion. It was a close game, but of course Tampa Bay Lightning again able to squeak it out. Now the pivotal game 4 in this series, it was a 2-2 game. Then Boston scored to make it 3-2, but time passes as Tampa Bay was playing a lot better, though, and they were able to tie it, and it goes into overtime. Of course, it was a tense game. This game could shift the series. If Tampa won, it would be a great lead for them. If Boston won, they would be able to tie this series back up. And Tampa Bay, Girardi was able to tip the puck in and score in overtime 4-3 over the Bruins, and was able to get that game 4, making a 3-1 series lead for Tampa Bay. And it was a close game. I think I saw that game the most out of the series, and it was a fantastic game to watch. Just watching it back and forth, it was craziness. It was like one team would score, then the other team would score, then the other team would score, then the other team would score. It was craziness. It was a roller coaster, but it was a great game to watch. But Tampa were able to squeak it out again over the Boston Bruins, and were able to get that clutchness going, and they were able to win it, and 3-1 lead for them, but they were just able to squeak it out again. You'll see the pattern happening here. They were able to just win when the Bruins were not. But then Game 5, Boston Bruins facing elimination in Tampa Bay, and they do not get it done. The Tampa Bay Lightning went 3-1. It was a close game. Boston got the first goal. In the second period, the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to score 2 goals. Were able to keep that until Strawman got the empty net goal in the third period, basically the end of the third period there, and they won 3-1. And it was a close game throughout. Again, another close one. It was 2-1 with like 3 minutes left in the third, so it was another close one. But again, these were close games. But Tampa, the pattern continues. They were able to find a win when Boston was kind of shooting themselves in the foot. Tampa was the one to get things done when they really needed to. And yeah, Boston got their chances, but Tampa was just able to convert on all their chances. They were able to get everything done while the Boston Bruins were getting chances. They were doing quite well in some games, but they were just not able to get it, and they were not able to finish off the Tampa Bay Lightning, and they were letting them come back in almost every single game and allow to win. I mean, Tampa was resilient. Even if they go down a goal or two, they'd come back up, and Boston, even though they had a couple leads in this series, were blowing them. Tampa just looked like the resilient team that they were really shown to be in the regular season, and Boston just was not able to handle them sometimes. But Tampa on to the conference final. They're awaiting the winner of the Washington-Pittsburgh series. Washington 3-2 right now, or the Pittsburgh Penguins, although that can change. The Pittsburgh Penguins are the Pittsburgh Penguins, by the way, so that can definitely change. I think both opponents are going to be tough for them. Washington can bring a fight, but Pittsburgh, of course, is going to be a tough opponent for them, as they've always been. And Tampa has only played 10 games throughout the whole playoffs so far. I think that's the least out of any team right now, and they have done a great job of preserving themselves. And I think going into the latter rounds is really important to get rest, even though in the, sometimes in the first few rounds, a team can come in hot and kind of blow you away if you get too much rest. But I think like a team like Tampa, especially going in the latter rounds, the conference final, the Stanley Cup final, I think that rest is really, really important. Even though they don't have too many injuries, even though they aren't too injured on that front, I still think that rest is really helpful, especially when you get to the last rounds, when you're still fighting, you're still grinding. But I think the Tampa Bay Lightning, to get that rest ahead of guys like Washington and Pittsburgh, is really going to help them going forward. But going into this series, we knew that the better goaltender would probably win the series, and it definitely did. Vasilevsky, I didn't say was too much better than Rask, but I say that Vasilevsky was for sure at least a little bit better than him. Rask just simply wasn't good enough to get past Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay Lightning were getting a lot of pressure on the Boston Bruins. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Rask wasn't the goaltender that he needed to show up to be to get past Tampa Bay Lightning this series, and it was kind of shown throughout this whole thing. Rask is good. He's a good goaltender, but he just was not good enough to get past Tampa Bay Lightning, and the offense, of course, for the Tampa Bay Lightning exposed him a little bit, and especially the defense on Boston. On the other hand, you have Vasilevsky, who had a great Game 5, was amazing in that game, and that's really important. If you're facing elimination for the team, the old goaltender is going to be good for you, but Vasilevsky was fantastic in the series. Even though he did allow a lot more goals than usual, I still think that the defense was a bit pedestrian. I think that Vasilevsky was making that Tampa Bay defense look a little bit better than it was, but Vasilevsky, especially in that Game 5, was amazing throughout. And I feel that Vasilevsky was one of the main reasons Tampa Bay Lightning got in throughout the series, got past Boston Bruins so quickly, only in 5 games. A lot of it is on Vasilevsky. I do believe he was fantastic throughout a lot of these games and really deserves a lot of credit. Now, even though Vasilevsky made that defense look pretty good, I still think that the Tampa Bay defense was pretty decent against the Boston Bruins. Even though the Boston Bruins had quite a few good games, at least chance-wise, the Tampa Bay Lightning defense was pretty good. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and it did give me a little bit more confidence in them going forward for the AC Conference Final and the Stanley Cup Final, hopefully. But the Tampa Bay defense was pretty decent. It really did impress me. Not going to give them too much hope because they can definitely disappoint, but I feel like they had a good series, and if they have a good series going forward, they can do that. But I feel like the series that they had is probably one of the best that they've had so far. But my boy on the Tampa Bay Lightning, Brayden Point, had an amazing series. He's elite as usual. But again, probably my favorite player on the Tampa Bay Lightning showed up, and he was fantastic, especially in this series, especially in Game 5. He's amazing. And he just does the little things. He does the great things that you need to win, and he definitely was an impact player, a fantastic player throughout the whole series. And he showed up in Game 5, definitely, and he was fantastic throughout the whole thing. Brayden Point was one of my favorites and has been one of my favorite players for a long time on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he definitely showed up to play and was fantastic. But Tampa's depth was fantastic. Gord had a great series. Palat really showed up. Girardi somehow out of nowhere had a great series. But Stamkos didn't have the greatest series. Kucherov only had like 2 points throughout the whole series, and that's what's so scary. Kucherov only 2 points in 5 games. Stamkos, he had an off series. So if the Tampa Bay Lightning, if they get Stamkos and Kucherov going, they are super deadly, and they just need those two guys to get a little bit better in the next few series, and they can just be rolling like they have, even more than they have against Boston and against New Jersey. If they can keep Stamkos and Kucherov, then they keep going. It can be super, super scary. Tampa Bay's depth has already shown up, especially in this series against Boston, but just wait until that star power keeps coming, or else it'll be deadly. And even on the defense side, Sergachev didn't have the greatest series. Hedman had a great series, though. But I'm talking about guys like Coburn and Girardi. They had great series, and I'm going to give them credit for it. Defensively, they were showing up. And honestly, when I saw they weren't giving up too many chances, they were decent, and they were good. They were what they needed to be, playoff performers. And, of course, they have had playoff experience in the past, so they're good with it. But I was impressed by their play. They weren't as much of a liability as I thought they were going to be, and they actually had a pretty good series, which is great to see from them going forward. see that they're not as a liability as they were in the regular season, but it's great to see that those guys are showing up at the playoffs like they've done before. But going to Boston now, I feel like that first line was really the only line that was working for Boston, and it has been that way, I think, a lot more than people really think. That first line, don't make me wrong, amazing, and it was definitely the best line throughout this whole series. But, man, the rest of the lines just were not working. I mean, guys like Backus really need to show up offensively, just did not. And Heinen didn't really work out. A lot of these guys that were in the bottom six, that the Boston Bruins needed to have the depth. They needed to have the depth rolling against Tampa. When Tampa was rolling with the depth, Boston needed to match that, and they certainly did not. The depth just was not getting it done. Wasn't good against Tampa's depth, and obviously Tampa's depth was a lot better throughout the whole series. Boston just was not able to match it, which they want to get past Boston, get past Tampa. They really needed to have that depth rolling, and of course they did not throughout this series. That first line was rolling as usual. It was amazing throughout this whole series. The depth was just not where it needed to be. But Tampa was fast, they were good enough, and they were making a lot of plays, and Tampa was just winding it down, making the Boston defense tired, and when you're doing that in the playoffs, you're certainly going to have an advantage, and they certainly did. It felt like Tampa was doing the right things offensively, defensively. They were just doing everything right, a lot better than the Boston Bruins could and ever hoped to achieve, and Tampa looked amazing, just throughout being able to tire down the Boston Bruins. It felt like that. It felt like the physicality was still there. They were able to make a lot of good plays, and Tampa Bay looked like there was no real weaknesses with them, which in the regular season was a little bit of a problem, at least defensively and somewhat goaltender-wise, but in this series, they were able to get a lot of their weaknesses beside them and were able to band together, and Tampa Bay is looking great, and they don't have too much of a weakness right now. Of course, they stay out of box relatively well throughout the whole series, and that was something that they needed to do, and they did it pretty well. But don't get me wrong, Tampa didn't win by a landslide, even though they won in 5 games. It was a lot like that in first round Golden Knights versus Kings series, where it was all the games were close. All the games were like 1-goal games, but it was a sweep for the Vegas Golden Knights. It was a close series. This series is a close series, but it was just the Tampa Bay Lightning were able to get past the Boston Bruins quickly, a lot quicker than we thought with these scores, as they were all pretty close. But yes, it was a 5-game victory for Tampa, but don't get me wrong, Boston still played well and was matching up against Tampa pretty well. It was just, Tampa was just able to squeak out games. They were close games, but Tampa was able to get it done. And that's the thing, Boston just was not able to do that. But the Lightning advanced to the Eastern Conference Final, looking pretty good, and I'd say ready against any opponent they face. But that is going to be it for today, guys. Guys, enjoy it. Make sure you like and subscribe if you guys haven't. Share with your friends if you haven't. Tell me down below what you thought of this series, Lightning versus Bruins, what you thought of the whole series as a whole. And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.